Hello, guys, welcome back. This is Run of the Week, where we track what unfolded this week across wellness, culture, business, and psychology, and decode what it reveals about the mind. The week abridged through the lens of the human mind. This is our first episode, guys. Welcome. Guys, I don't know about you, but the world news and all the developments within the world are sometimes very scary to me. We notice all that is happening across the world, and it just feels too loud. And the world does feel loud lately, right? Wars on one screen, economy on another, deadlines, expectations, comparison everywhere else. Even when nothing is directly wrong in your life per se, your nervous system is still absorbing everything. And at one point, what you're experiencing is not just fear, it's numbness to all that is happening, and you're just done. Like, I can't take it anymore, right? And that is why sometimes we avoid watching the news because it's gonna make us feel more negative about the world that is still uncertain in the space that you stand at. And then you experience uncertainty fatigue. And it's also called an adaptive emotional blunting, a survival response and not indifference. What the week tells us is humans don't need less information. They need more interpretation, more meaning in our lives. So, how can we create those systems for us where we are protective of our mind, we are protective into how we respond to things? Meaning protects the mind better than updates. Point number one, shrink the time frame. Uncertainty becomes unbearable when the brain tries to manage the future. So don't ask what will happen this year. Ask, what do I need to do today? The nervous system can handle now, it collapses under forever. Point number two, create controllable anchors. You can't control wars or markets, that's beyond you, right? But the brain calms down when something repeats. Anchors can be waking up at the same time, one fixed meal, one non negotiable walk, one song every morning. Consistency tells the brain not everything is falling apart. Point number three, limit information, not awareness. Constant news is not preparedness, it just makes you feel more anxious, right? It equals nervous system overload. Do this instead. One intentional news check. No scrolling before sleep, okay? Balance every fear based input with a grounding activity, anything that helps you feel grounded. Your brain needs context, not a constant threat that life is not great and it's not great, right? It's messed up, whatever. You don't need that. Point number four, move the body to calm the mind. Uncertainty creates stored stress. Movement completes the stress cycle. Walking, stretching, slow breathing, even shaking out the body the way you want to. Zumba, do that. Listen to music. Have your own dance session. You can do all of it. Next point, allow uncertainty without solving it. This is the hardest one, right? Safety doesn't come from certainty, it comes from self trust. Even if I don't know what's next, I'll respond when it arrives. That belief is built through small, repeated coping, not predictions. So don't assume the worst for yourself. Yes, you can be prepared, but have that self trust that you will do it and it will definitely help you out. Sixth point, name what you're actually afraid of. Often we say I'm scared about the world, but underneath it is I'm afraid I won't cope, I'm afraid of losing control, I'm afraid I'll be alone. Naming the real fear reduces its power. The last point, stay connected even quietly. Isolation magnifies uncertainty. You don't need deep conversations, just human presence. Sitting with someone, a short call, being in shared space, the nervous system stabilizes in connection. Have you heard about this term called Parkinson's Law? If you haven't, you're at the right place. Why time expands stress, not productivity. Ever notice this? Give yourself one day to finish something, you somehow will do it. Give yourself 1 week, it mysteriously takes the whole week. That's not laziness, that's the Parkinson's law. Parkinson's law says work expands to fill in the time available for its completion. But here's the psychological layer we miss. More time doesn't mean clarity, it means mental clutter. What actually expands? When time expands, so does overthinking, self doubt, perfectionism, anxiety about outcomes, all of the negative stuff. The task stays the same, the mental noise grows. That's why unlimited time often feels heavier than a tight deadline. So, why the brain works this way? The brain loves urgency, not pressure. Mind it, urgency and not pressure. Urgency narrows focus, reduces choice overload, forces prioritization. Too much time tells the brain, relax, you can think later, you have a lot of time, and later never comes. So, I'm going to give you one example. Think about it. Studying the night before exam, finishing a presentation right before a meeting, cleaning the house before the guests arrive. Same ability, right? Different time frame, massively different output. The hidden cost of this. When tasks stretch, motivation drops, energy leaks, guilt builds quietly. You're not tired from doing the work, you're tired from carrying it unfinished. So, a micro reframe. Instead of asking how much time do I have, ask what is the smallest serious deadline I can give this. Short deadlines don't push the brain, they protect it. And we think other way around, right? It's crazy how the brain works. So now you might have understood that time doesn't per se improve work, boundaries do. This was Parkinson's law, the second law we discussed on this channel. Not about working faster per se, but about thinking clearer. Now, coming to our third topic. Why are we scared of AI and how do we help ourselves? I'm sure all of us might have some anxiety connected to AI, thinking that our jobs might be in danger, which they might be definitely. And at the same time, a lot of layoffs across sectors, which adds to our anxiety, right? What do we do? How do we secure our futures? It's a big thing to carry on our shoulders, right? So we say we are curious about AI, but underneath curiosity is fear. Not dramatic fear per se, but quiet fear. The kind that shows up as restlessness, comparison, pressure to keep up, a feeling that time is running out, that you will be replaced. What we are actually afraid of. We are not scared of technology per se, we are scared of becoming irrelevant, losing financial safety, not being needed, falling behind silently. AI didn't invent these features, right? These fears weren't invented by AI. It activated them though. Because it arrived faster than our sense of stability. So here's the thing about our humankind. The human brain needs predictable paths. School, career, growth, security. Our parents had it that way, where they did a particular step and step by step, it was very predictable for them. And that is not the case for us, right? What do we do? AI disrupted the path, not the destination. Now the brain can't answer what do I work towards. Unclear effort feels unsafe. All of us are experiencing that. Why comparison makes it worse? With AI, comparison is constant. Who adapted faster? Who learned tools already? Who is earning more because of it? The mind reads comparison as my timeline is wrong. That creates urgency without direction. The most anxiety producing state. Why fear shows up as productivity pressure. Instead of sitting with fear, we try to outrun it. Learn faster, do more, stay updated, but chasing certainty through productivity never calms the nervous system per se. It just exhausts it. How we actually help ourselves? What can we do about it? One is separate skills from self-worth. Your value is not your speed of adaptation of a skill. Skills can be updated. Identity that you have about yourself cannot be rushed. Point number 2. Shift from keeping up to choosing direction. You don't need every AI tool. You need one direction, one reason, one pace. Clarity reduces fear more than information. Point number 3. Anchor in what AI can't replace. AI handles speed and output, yes, definitely. But humans have something that AI doesn't. Humans hold meaning, judgment, ethics, emotional intelligence, and context. Develop depth, not just efficiency. Where efficiency is important, it's not everything. Point number 4. Shrink the future. Don't ask what will my career look like in 10 years. Ask what can I learn or improve this month. The nervous system needs clarity in the nearness. It prefers the nearness, not just long directions or predictions. Point number 5. Normalize not knowing. Uncertainty isn't failure. Every generation, perhaps even our parents and grandparents' generation, had a moment where the future breaks into a promise. This is ours. One grounding sentence for you guys. I don't need to win the future. I just need to stay responsive to it. Fear doesn't mean you're weak. It means something is important and it feels like a risk right now. But I can identify it and I can work on it through grounding. Guys, now let's come to the next topic. Why Kusha Kapila's underneath worked. She's one of the content creators, right? And over the years, we've seen so many content creators come up with their own brands, and majority of them did not really work out, right? We've seen so many failures. But Kusha Kapila garnered success, and there's something to learn from her, right? Everyone around us has this question. Is Underneath really successful just because of Kusha Kapila being successful or famous? Short answer, fame did get attention for the brand, but psychology built the brand from scratch. Let's break it down. Point number 1. She didn't enter a market, she entered a tension. The Indian inner and shapewear market was already crowded. Zivame, Clovia, Pretty Secrets, all of them were already present and they were thriving, really thriving. But most brands were selling sexy, perfect fit confidence. What they weren't selling was relief. Relief from body judgment, size shame, unrealistic silhouettes. Marketing psychology insight for you guys. Consumers don't buy products, they buy solutions to emotional friction. Underneath positioned itself beautifully here. This is not about fixing your body, this is about letting it exist. That's a tension based entry, not a category entry. Point number 2. She flipped the aspirational model. Traditional lingerie marketing works on upward comparison. Become this version of yourself. But psychology says upward comparison leads to short term desire, not long term. Downward or lateral relatability, on the other hand, creates long term trust. Underneath chose relatability over aspiration. Campaign language focused on real folds, real posture, real discomfort. According to consumer psychology studies across fashion and FMCG, brands using relatable models see up to 30 to 40% higher trust and recall than aspirational only campaigns. Trust beats aesthetics when purchases are intimate. Point number 3. The brand didn't shout, it reassured. Tone matters more than messaging. Most brands say, "You look amazing." Underneath says, "You don't need to look different." Psychological effect. Reduces purchase anxiety, lowers cognitive dissonance, makes the buyer feel safe and not evaluated or judged, right? And we want that. Point number 4. Kusha didn't leverage influence, she leveraged parasocial trust. Yes, Kusha Kapila has reach. We all know the kind of reach she has. But reach is not equal to persuasion, guys. What she actually had was years of self-deprecating honesty, a reputation for naming discomfort, emotional familiarity with her audience. Psychological term for you guys, it's parasocial credibility here. When audiences feel she experiences what I experience, that converts better than any celebrity endorsement. Also, fun fact, guys. Influencer-led brands with identity alignment outperform generic celebrity brands by 2 to 3 times in repeat purchase intent. That's crazy. She has done this so beautifully. Also, guys, now we're coming to point number 5, which according to me is one of the most important. The brand became a permission structure. This is the most important part. Underneath didn't just sell in a way, it sold permission. Permission to be soft, permission to be sculpted, permission to not perform femininity. In psychology, this reduces self surveillance, the constant monitoring of how one looks. And when surveillance drops, brand loyalty increases, return decreases, emotional attachment grows with the brand. And we know of so many brands that we are emotionally attached with, right? We have Maggie and other brands that capture on this very beautifully, even Cadbury for that matter. Why is Underneath a case study and not just a brand? Because it proves one very important thing. In saturated markets, psychological positioning beats functional differentiation. You don't win by being better, you win by being truer to what people are afraid to admit. Also, to give Kusha credit, her products are excellent. The ethos and the psychology of marketing is what we are impressed with. Also, the products. So, this is Psyche Abrished. In the future, we are planning to bring more episodes about how brands position themselves and the psychological part of things. So, guys, coming to the last segment of this run of the week with Psyche Abrished. Do you guys know the difference between selfishness and self interest? Selfishness is taking without considering impact. Self interest is choosing with awareness of impact. Selfishness says if I win, it doesn't matter who loses. Self interest says I choose what sustains me without harming you. Selfishness is short term relief. Self interest is long term stability. And here's why self interest matters. When you don't act in your self interest, you don't become selfless, you become resentful. Healthy self interest sets boundaries, prevents burnout, and creates honest relationships. It's not about putting yourself above another, it's about not putting yourself last. Self interest is how you stay whole in a demanding world. That's not selfish, that's psychological survival. And that's the run of the week, guys. Before you scroll away, take a moment and reflect. Think about it. Think about what stayed with you and what you might want to carry into the next week ahead. There's no right or wrong answer, just awareness. See you next week again, guys. Right here at Psyche Abridged.